Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. Just to explain how this works, if you've never attended it before, I do it normally every Friday. We'll have a quick look at some of the major announcements coming out next week in markets. It's been a big week this week for announcements. We had the payrolls just over an hour ago, and that Fed minutes release on Wednesday night, and it was a US holiday on Tuesday. So it's been a bit of an odd week, but we'll have a look at the major announcements for next week. Once we've done that, we'll jump onto the charts, take a look at the markets, the big stuff, indices, FX, commodities, all the usual. And then if there's any stuff you want looking at, we'll take a look at that as well. As usual, we've got this headless chicken thing over the payrolls. If we have a look, this is the NASDAQ. That's where the number came out. So we saw the NASDAQ jump about 100 points actually. And lo and behold, we're back to where it was trading before the payrolls came out. So I think I often say I don't trade over things like payrolls. I wouldn't put a trade on 10 minutes before the payroll's going to come out, trying to second guess where the market's going to go, because you get moves like this. But we'll take a look at it in a bit more detail. I do wonder if there's an opportunity this afternoon in the NASDAQ, so we might do a trade. As usual, I've got a trading account that I use for this. Real money, my money, in here. We've got a few trades in here from previous live streams, and there's the natural gas trade from, I think it was a week last Wednesday, whenever I did the natural gas trade on the channel, short natural gas. So went short at 284, still short. Canadian dollar, Swiss franc, that's doing all right. We did that in last week's live stream as well. So if there's any trades today, we'll do it on there and we'll take a look at the performance of this account so far. But let's get into it properly and get started. So this presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay, next week. So next week, there's a few big things next week, big-ish. Monday morning, China inflation. Markets don't seem that bothered about Chinese inflation data, but I thought I'd pop that in there because inflation is clearly still a big topic overall for markets. On Wednesday, probably the biggest announcement of the week, US inflation. So the US consumer price index thing. Let me see, what are the expectations for that? Because we have seen that falling over recent months, haven't we? Let me just have a quick look what the forecast is for Wednesday for US. So 4%, does that look right? Hang on a second. Let me drag this over, this economic calendar, see if I can make any sense of it. So US CPI, it hasn't got the previous. Oh, it hasn't put any expectations in there yet. Let's see what that looks like anyway on Wednesday. So we could see some volatility in these markets next week. Thursday, we've got UK GDP. So how well or not is the UK economy doing? I think the forecast on that, when I looked before, it was for slightly positive growth, I think. For the UK economy. Let's see, is the UK economy going to contract in the current quarter, or are we going to see a slight blip higher? And then also on Thursday of next week, we've got US PPI, Producer Price Index, Factory Gate Inflation. So quite a week geared towards inflation next week. This week has been an odd one. I run a WhatsApp group, which I'll talk about in a minute. I've only done a couple of trades this week. I did a trade on the DAX. I got stopped out of that. I did a trade on the Aussie dollar earlier in the week, Tuesday, I think it was, somewhere in here, 66.60, something like that. I'm still in that trade, but it's been for me, it's been a really scrappy week. So I haven't, like I say, I haven't traded much. I'd normally do probably at least 3 or 4 trades a week. I've only done 2. this week. We'll take a look at some of the stuff I think might be interesting this afternoon. But you can see, if we look at something like the dollar index, this is where we are now in the dollar index, 102.80, which is pretty much where we were a week ago. So we did have a bit of a trend building during the week, and it's given it all up today. You know, if we look at stock markets, NASDAQ is trading where it was a week ago, this time last week. So we've been up a bit, we've been down a bit, quite a big sell-off yesterday, but we're bobbling around where we were a week ago. So not the most exciting of weeks for me, but I have had, I think like I said last time, I had a really good couple of months, May and June. Best 2 month run. I have to go back to September last year. So I was always expecting perhaps a bit of scrappiness, and this has been a week where the scrappiness has arrived for me. Not helped at all, I don't think, by that US holiday on Tuesday, the Fed minutes on Wednesday night, and the payrolls today. Just too much stuff, people hanging around to see what happens. So I'm hoping we'll get back a bit more back to normal next week. So a quick word from, as usual, from me on the other stuff I do. I run a trading course. There are 2 parts to the trading course: medium-term trading and shorter-term trading. The course has been running for a few years now. As part of the course, you get access to 4 live webinars with me. We did the last one last night on trading psychology. And you also get access to the WhatsApp group. This WhatsApp group used to be just for people who'd been on the course. Just give you an idea, there's lots more detail on my performance if you go to the website. But while I was writing the course last year, and when I launched it, the shorter term course in autumn of last year, I traded this account. I talked about it a lot on this channel, end of last year, beginning of this. I put £4,000 in an account, traded it for 3 months sort of publicly, and that was the position at the end of January. So closed trades just under 2,200. So what's that on a £4,000 account? That is about can't do the maths in my head, 50% return and a little bit more, isn't it? So 50% return on the account over that 3 month period. 2/3 of trades were profitable, which is higher than usual for me, but there were some good trends during that time. So you can see more on the numbers. If Alexa, stop. If I go to my website, davidjonestrading.co.uk, and go to performance, you can see a bit more detail of all the trades that made up that trading performance in there over that period. All the winners and the losers are in there. And it was done. I did it to demonstrate that I put my money where my mouth is. I think plenty of people running these courses don't put their money where their mouth is. But anyway, what I'm doing now, I opened this WhatsApp group up to a wider audience. So if you want to, it used to be just for people who've been on the course. If you want to join the WhatsApp group, you can without doing the course now. So what happens in the WhatsApp group every day? I do a daily update in the morning, trades I've got running, what markets I'm looking at, and a chart of the day. There we go, markets I'm watching, trades I'm running. And then if there's any questions, you can just fire them in during the day. So I do that every day. It seems to be going well so far. That's a typical snapshot. I think that's from last week. This morning, I said I was hanging on for the payrolls. The 2 markets I would watch in the afternoon would be the NASDAQ and silver. We'll have a look at those in a second. So that's the WhatsApp group that you can join if you want to. 5-star Trustpilot reviews. I send a newsletter out every week when I remember. That's free of charge. If you go to my website, you can sign up for that on the home page somewhere. When you land, there should be a little box. I don't even know where it is. Don't even know how to navigate my own website. Hang on a second. If you go to the website homepage, there we go, and you can put your details in there to be added to the newsletter. But the WhatsApp group, if you sign up for it and use the code YouTube, you get 20% off the first month. Okay, so it's you have to pay for it. It's not free. But if you go to my website, I'll put all the links in the description. Go to subscribe up here. And I think you need to create an account on the website first of all. And you can join the WhatsApp group, use the code YouTube in there, and you get 20% off. So, it's, try it and see for a month. But it's me every morning, stuff I'm looking at, and an update on the trades I'm running, and a whole load of Q&A. That's that. Okay, right, let's get into it. Let's take a look at these markets. Where shall we start? Let's start with stock markets. Let's start with the Nasdaq. Let's flip it over to a dailies. Let's look at the big picture first. Then I'll talk about perhaps the trade I was thinking I was going to do this afternoon. Not much has changed over the last week. We've had early closing on Monday because of the US holiday on Tuesday. Everyone waiting for the Fed minutes on Wednesday, and then perhaps yesterday everyone waiting for the non-farm payroll. So it's been a bit of a non-event of a week. It doesn't change the big trend. The big trend for the Nasdaq is still up. I've still got my longer-term Nasdaq trade on from February the 14th. Back here, where is it? There we go. In there, went against me for about a month and a bit, but eventually went the right way. So I'm still in long the Nasdaq. I've got a long on the DAX as well. So I'm still a buyer of the dips on the Nasdaq and the S&P. The question is just how far does it go? The trade I was thinking about for this afternoon, the short-term trade for this afternoon, perhaps let's see what happens over the next couple of hours or so. We did see this market. I think this was new highs for the year briefly on Wednesday of this week. So, it does suggest the trend is still strong. We had a bit of quite the sell-off yesterday, but I was wondering, the low yesterday, is that an important low for the Nasdaq? So the trade I was thinking about was being a buyer this afternoon when things settle down after the payrolls, and a stop loss. The closest I'd have for a stop loss would be underneath the low from yesterday, or maybe a bit wider below these lows back here from last Thursday. So me, I'm looking to buy the dip in the Nasdaq. The only question, and it's a big question, is yesterday's low the absolute low for some time in the short term. Let's see what happens with that this afternoon. But the medium term chart is still the same. It's still going up. I did wonder, and it could still be a problem up here, I suppose. We're back up to levels on this market. There we go. The highs from Feb 2022 and late March 2022 coming in around 15,100, that sort of area. No, it's not. It's higher than that. 15,300, that sort of area. Is that going to be a problem for this rally in the Nasdaq? Let's see what the next week or so brings. But for now, in the short term, I'm absolutely a buyer of the dip on the Nasdaq. Same for the S&P, of course. So the trend for the S&P since October last year has been up. It's not gained perhaps as much as the Nasdaq, but it's been a good trend. We've broken out through some big levels. These here, whatever they are, 43.25 from August last year. So again, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the S&P at its best level since April 2022. For fans of the squiggly lines, we could have a bit of what's known as bearish divergence. So the market has moved higher like that. Look at that, bit of art up here, higher highs. But the RSI has moved lower. We've got lower highs in the RSI. So that could be a suggestion that perhaps this bit of the trend is getting a bit tired. So I don't pay that much attention to oscillators, if any at all. But when we have a setup like divergence, because it's fairly rare, I do pay attention to it. We had a bit back here, for example, back in September, October last year, bullish divergence. The market slips to a low, but the RSI is making higher lows. So again, can be a suggestion that there could be a turn coming in the market. Let's see what happens. But as I say, I would absolutely still be a buyer of the dips in the S&P. Let's look. What's the level to watch this afternoon? Well, I think if we're going to compare it with the Nasdaq, if I was thinking about buying the dip this afternoon, the first level I watch would be yesterday's low, 43.85, and then after that, clearly we've got a cluster of support on the way up from 43.60, 43.72, 43.85. So interesting. I think even if we have a bit of an uneventful day today, I think those are some interesting levels to watch in the short term next week. But overall, as I've been saying for what feels like forever, all this year on this market, the trend is up. So I want to be a buyer. I want to buy a dip. DAX, I got stopped out of the DAX this week on a short-term trade. But again, with the DAX, it was only middle of June, it hit all-time highs. This is an all-time high up here, I do believe. Yeah. So it's been knocked back, and knocked back today actually as well. Unlike the US indices, the DAX has been knocked back today. I wonder if that will be an interesting one for next week, even though it's fallen out of the trend line. If you've done the trading course, you know, one of the things I say in the course, I never believe the first break. So for me, I think that's another interesting, perhaps buy the dip next week. Let's see where it settles. You could argue, could you buy the dip today? Perhaps not today. It did make another low today. Let's see. I'd rather wait till next week. So that'll be interesting because this market has got knocked back about 800 points, 5% off the highs. Do we see the buyers come back in and think, oh, this is a bargain? So again, for fans of the squiggles, the RSI did go oversold right down here. First time it's been oversold since October, September last year. So it shows you, you know, it's not that extreme a move, but from an RSI point of view, it shows you perhaps how extreme the move has been. So that's the DAX. Japan, 225, same on this. This is interesting, I think. You know, we've had this really good run in the Nikkei, pretty sideways, Feb 21 through to March of this year. So almost a good couple of years, sideways Nikkei. It's got quite the run on since March. So again, I'd be looking to buy the dip in the Nikkei. Let's see, we've got a bit of support, which is having a little fiddle through today. We've got bigger support coming in around 31.4. So all in all, I think it makes for some interesting stock markets next week. So for me, the immediate one, NASDAQ this afternoon. Is there a short-term trade on the NASDAQ? Let's see what happens there. And then the other ones, the likes of the DAX and the Nikkei. Do we see a bit of a turnaround next week? What's the FTSE doing? The FTSE's absolutely plummeting, isn't it? It's not plummeting, but it's going back to the lows for the year, the FTSE. So that will be interesting as well. So we had this FTSE level at 7,200 in March of this year. The market did run up to 7,900, so we had a good 10% swing off that level. And here we are again, down at 7,260 for the FTSE. Let's see, 7,200, does it hold next week? Or are we going to get the crash? We're going to get a summer crash for stock markets starting next week when all these big levels get broken. Let's see. I can't see it yet, famous last words. So for me, I'd still be looking to be a buyer of the FTSE and the DAX next week. I think the DAX is perhaps the more interesting one for me, and the Nikkei as well, actually. Let's see. So yeah, I think they're well worth watching from the beginning of the week, those markets. Let's take a look at not stocks, some of the currency markets. Look at the dollar index. I'm a big fan of the dollar index, the dollar against a basket of different currencies. But it's been a really, frustrating is the wrong word, just a bit of a directionless year for the dollar index. Here's the dollar index for the year so far. Sideways, isn't it? You know, we see it when it gets knocked down to about 101-ish. It rallies, it runs out of steam, sort of 104, 105 and a half. So we're pretty much in the middle. So just scrappy and directionless, and clearly it has an impact. What the dollar is doing has an impact on so many other markets: gold, silver, euro, copper. You know, there's so many things quoted against the dollar that you know, this lack of direction makes it a bit difficult, I think, for some of the other markets, particularly, you know, maybe being spoilt a bit. I traded it a lot on the way up. I used to talk about it a lot in the old days. Some great trends on the way up in the dollar index into the autumn of last year. Fell off, and now it's just stuck there, isn't it? So I don't know what's going on. I do sort of lean towards it making a base, perhaps, in this 101 area, but there's not a lot exciting happening yet. Saying all that, I did wonder, before I came on, if there was a buying opportunity in the dollar index this afternoon. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe this is the trade we'll do. Because all this week, I mentioned this in last week's live stream. Where were we last week? Friday. We were here last week. And I said I was going to buy it. And I didn't buy it. And I was sort of kicking myself for a lot of this week because the market had moved higher up until here. And then it's sort of fallen off again. So I wonder if there is a bit of a trading buy in the US dollar here. It's not the most brilliant trade in the world, but then it hasn't been the most brilliant week in the world from a trend following point of view. So what do you do? So the market has, we had a bit of support around 102.75. The market's traded so far as low as 102.60. What I would normally do is be more patient and wait for some stability this afternoon rather than trying to catch this falling knife. But perhaps let's do a trade in here. Let's see if these old lows are going to hold. So what I might do for a stop, I want to give it a bit of a wiggle room. Maybe I'm going to go below a week last Tuesday low. So 102.30, 32. Say I go 102.25. So I'm going to do 102.25 and I'm going to buy it now. Let's do that. Have I got enough money in this account? I think I have got enough money to buy it. Hold on a second. If I put in DXY, does that bring it up, DXY? No, it doesn't like that. US dollar index, there we go. Right, we're going to buy it. So let's just so I'm going to trade the futures. So it might be a bit different to the cash. So the futures are trading at 102.38. I've got the cash at 66. There's 30 points difference. Where did I say my stop was going to go? 25. So 101.95 is the stop. There we go. Let's set that trade up. So stop 101.95. Let's risk $160, $70, whatever it is. That's it, isn't it? Have I got enough margin? I haven't got enough margin in my account. Oh, it's big margin on this thing. Let me knock it back. Okay, I've got enough margin. If I do that, I'll do a smaller size. I keep meaning to put more margin in this account, and then of course I keep forgetting. So the margin requirement is £1,600. I've got a couple of £1,000 margin. All right, let's do it. Let's place that trade. And I think that's an interesting trade, maybe for this afternoon. Let's see how it works out. So if I show you on this chart, so I've traded the September futures effectively. So the levels are slightly different, but this is what I'm doing. So I'm speculating that perhaps the move today has been a bit overdone. Let's see how today goes on. I should really expect it to turn around over the next hour if it has been overdone, but I've put my stop loss below Tuesday's low. I should have put it a bit wider anyway, whatever, it'll do for now. Let's see how that one turns out over the next week. But I think that's an interesting market to watch this afternoon. If you wanted markets to watch this afternoon, for me, NASDAQ, which is getting a bit of a move on now, and that dollar index to see, do we see a bit of a turnaround after this weakness? Let's see what happens. So that's the US dollar. So on the dailies, still pretty, just scrapper-armor, really, on the dailies. So let's see what happens there. Pound against the dollar. It's still, that trend is still going, pound against the dollar. So that trend has been going since October last year. So despite the sidewaysness of the US dollar, the pound is making gains against the dollar. So, that trend's in place. What can you say? Nice trend. Buy the dips. Let's see if we take out these old highs from June. So the next target for me might be a run up to about 132, 133. These highs from March 2022. Let's see. So I'd be quite happy to buy a dip in the pound, and it's only if it starts breaking below 125 would I start to worry this trend was in trouble. Euro US dollar. I do have a trade on euro dollar at the moment. I've been in this trade for ages, it feels like, because I think it's a week and a half. I bought in here when the thing was happily trending higher, and then since I bought, actually it must have been in here, Monday last week, and it sort of had a little trend for a bit, and it's just clonked out again on the hourlies. Let's see. Hopefully that gets a bit of a move on this afternoon. But anyway, on the dailies, euro against the dollar, not very exciting. We're trading on the euro where we were on the 1st of Feb. So, volatility over the last 6 months, obviously, but not much direction. So, there you go. What can you say? So the trend for me looks something like that. So it's fallen out of the trend line. But for me, my bias would still be the trend is still up. We've still got higher highs and higher lows. It's just gone a bit boring, really. So not too much to say for that. The pound against the dollar looks like the better the better trend there. The other one, dollar yen. I've been in a dollar yen trade for quite a few months as well. I mean, that's interesting. That's an interesting one for next week, that dollar yen. So I'm in the trade anyway. Let me just tidy this up a little bit. So I've been in the trade since about here somewhere, March, for my medium-term trade. The thing has accelerated away. The dollar hit a new high against the yen for this move, end of June. Got clobbered quite a bit today on that US dollar weakness. This is another interesting one for next week. See, next week looks much more interesting than this week has. I actually feel like I can do something next week. So that'll be an interesting one next week, dollar yen. The old lows, I would pick those lows up, 141.22. Let's call it 141.20. Trend line coming in at 140. Do we see the dollar snap back against the yen next week? So that's an interesting one to watch next week. The other ones are the ones where we take the dollar out of the equation. I mentioned it in the WhatsApp group this week. The likes of euro yen, been a really good trend. Look at that trend. Going back to, if you just pick up from there, March last year. Hit multi-year highs, all-time highs, I think. No, not quite all-time highs. Hit its highest since 2008. So 14-year plus highs. So again, I'd be a buyer of the dip in euro yen. Not today, but let's see where the dip in euro yen stops. Sterling yen is another one. So I think these ones, because for me, there's so much just indecision and sidewaysness for the US dollar at the moment. It's quite interesting to look at these non-dollar currency pairs. So let's see. So there's a few to watch there next week. Let's take a look at gold. Gold is... Let's watch. Where should we start on gold? Okay, if I looked on the daily chart, there's an argument to be a buyer on gold. Okay, so I would take the view. I do think it's going to be a bit boring, but I would take the view. Right, the trend since November has been up. Bang, bang, bang. It has fallen out of the uptrend, sorry. But we've still got, if we take that as the previous major low, we've still got higher lows and higher highs so far. So I would say perhaps for the adventurous, there's perhaps a buy trade in here. You know, if I was a buyer now at 19.25, put my stop loss the other side of 18.85, whatever that is, that low there. So I'd have maybe a $40 stop and see, can the market, and if it runs back up to the old high, which might be a bit of a stretch, but there's 150, 160 points there for 40 points risk. That's quite an interesting trade if you thought this old 18.85 was a bit of a level. It's had a bit of a crazy couple of days. Look at that. Yesterday, this is what, the week has just been scrap like this. So yesterday, gold was chugging higher, then gets slammed, and then we're back up now to where we were yesterday before the slam started. So yeah, a bit of a strange one, but I would probably be leaning towards being a buyer rather than a seller. Although I'm sure you could make the argument, if we took that, there we go, if we take that chart out, because there's always an argument, or there's usually an argument for being a buyer or a seller, isn't there? Because otherwise markets would just go in one direction. So you could make the argument, I suppose, it's having the first go at breaking out of that downtrend. So the more patient may want to wait for a break of 1940 or something to confirm that downtrend's over. So it's interesting. So if you were still bearish on gold, you know, this strength, if you get a bit of a run up to 1930, it's quite interesting to go short with stops above 1940, maybe. So again, arguments for both ways on gold, but the dailies for me, I wonder if we will see it start to make a base here. Again, of course, so much of this is dependent on the US dollar. So let's see what happens. Silver. I mentioned this in the WhatsApp group this morning. Called it perfectly. Haven't actually traded it yet. Let's see what happens. So for me, I wonder if there's an opportunity this afternoon. But before we get into that, let's take a look. I've mentioned a few times I hate silver. I went through a period about 18 months ago. If I bought it, it went down. If I sold it, it went up. And I got really frustrated with it. And I don't think I've traded it in more than a year, silver. So I thought today is the day I deal with my psychological block on silver and I put the trade on. So what I was thinking is, if you look at the trend over the last, since September last year, so what's that, 9 months, the trend is still up on silver. So for me, the big trend is still up on silver. You could argue the trend so far is still down off these, the correction I should say is still down. But for me, the bias for silver is still up. If I was a buyer on the dailies, I would want my stop probably the other side of $21.50, something like that. But what I was thinking today, coming into today, the thing I mentioned in the WhatsApp group, and maybe I'll get a second chance of it this afternoon, looking on the hourly chart, so a short-term trade on silver. So I was going to take the view, if we plonk that in there, you know, if we look at silver there, up until Wednesday, the trend for silver was up. You know, we've had higher highs, higher lows, blah, 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 since the 23rd of June. So we were a week and a half into that trend. Over the last couple of days, it's got clobbered with this bit of dollar strength, but I was speculating that perhaps this was just a buying opportunity, was what I was thinking. So if I was a buyer today, and I will buy it this afternoon to deal with my psychological issues with silver, if it go, the closest I want my stop, the other side of yesterday's low, 22.50, because silver is a bit of a crazy market, I'd probably go even wider than that and pick a level back there below 22.26. But I thought it was interesting. You know, it had been chugging higher. It's been knocked back, but it's not really fallen off a cliff. We had a sharp sell-off yesterday. It has stabilised. Let's see what happens. If this trend is going to continue, my first target, run back to Wednesday's high, about $23.30. You know, after that, there's quite a lot of fresh air, up to the $24 plus area. So for me, NASDAQ and silver are still the two markets I'll be watching this afternoon. So that's those, and gold as well, I suppose, looks positive. Let's see what happens. So that's that. So there's quite, you know, it looks like it's going to be an interesting week next week. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff going on. Let's take a look at some of these other markets. Oil. I think on the dailies, it's been interesting. I did trade oil. I was in a trade for oil from last week, and I closed it out this week. And I should really have bought back in again. But anyway, if we look on the dailies, if we take the thing off, the drawings off, on the dailies it's still pretty boring. So this is the trend for oil. You know, going back to December last year, it's pretty sideways, isn't it? You know, up around 82, it runs out of steam, much below 66. The buyers come back in, and at the moment, it's not too far away from being in the middle. So it's just stuck in this range, oil. So from a more medium-term point of view, not that exciting. But on the hourlies, we absolutely have a trend on oil. There was a good trade yesterday, the old Harry Hindsight trade yesterday, this sell-off. But we've got this good trend in the short term, chugging along on oil, looking something like that at the moment. So I don't think I'd buy it now, because, you know, we do get these quite sharp sell-offs in oil. But another interesting one for next week, if it got knocked back to $70.50, $71, it looks interesting. I would have, you know, one eye on these old levels, like from back here. There's a whole bunch of them, isn't there? From like 72.50 to 73.30 to 73.80. So it has been, you know, we're running back into what has been a problem area for oil over the last 5 weeks or so. But for me, the trend is still up. So for now, I'd happily be a buyer of the dip in oil. So let's see what happens. So yeah, but I came out of it. When I came out of it, not Thursday, I came out of it here about 70, 75 or something like that. And then I should really have got back in, at least here. There was lots of opportunities to get back in, but I didn't, because I was sort of having a bit of a week off it this week. So that's oil. Natural gas, I don't know. I'm short in this account, and that trade is doing all right. So I'm short natural gas from 284 in this account from a week and a half ago, I think it was. And that was based on the dailies. So if you look at the dailies, I thought that was a fair enough short up here somewhere. Looking to see if these old highs from March are a problem again. I think that's a fair enough trade still. So even though, you know, we have seen a recovery in natural gas, you know, we've still got a big level to break, I think, around about $3. So on the more medium term view, short. But on the hourlies, the trend is up. You know, on the shorter term time frame, if we look from the beginning of June, that trend is up. on natural gas. So I'd be a buyer. In the short term, I'd be a buyer. I'm quite happy to stick with my longer term short, but in the short term, I'd go long. So let's see what happens. But you know, it's a weird old market, natural gas, isn't it? If I was a buyer now, the absolute closest I would have my stop would be the other side of 250, and I'd probably want it a bit further than that, down here, the other side of 240. You know, but it's been a bit of, again, like a lot of markets this week, it's been a bit of an uneventful week this week, but that level has held on natural gas. So let's see what it looks like going into next week. And then finally, before we get into the stuff you want looking at, the Bitcoin. Nothing's changed for me on the old cryptos, on Bitcoin. The trend is up. You know, I've been saying this for most of the last few months. The trend is up for this year for Bitcoin. Lovely textbook sell-off by the dip in June, middle of June. It's sort of been hanging around up here for a couple of weeks now. So I'd rather buy a dip rather than buy it up here. You know, if it gets knocked back below 28,000, it looks interesting. So yeah, that's same old really for Bitcoin. Maybe these old highs around 32 and a bit end up being a problem, but I would be looking to buy the dip on Bitcoin. So we'll see how it works out. So there you go. Let's have a quick look at some of these trades in here. What have we got? Natural gas is still the big winner. If I show you some of the numbers, so like I say, this is a real account. This is an account I use for the YouTube stuff. Real account with my money. I put $2,000 in, whenever it was, in March of this year. If I show you the numbers, the reason I like this broker, because the reporting is very good. So if I show you the numbers since the account started, I think it's telling me off because I've got too many trades open. So if I do from where the account started, this number is wrong. It's not up 117%. It is up 50%, 50 and a bit percent. So at the moment, my account equity is £3,000 in this account from a £2,000 start. Win rate is 60%. That is slightly higher than usual. My normal win rate is about 58%. So it's slightly 2% less than that. So 6 out of 10 trades have been profitable. Risk reward has been really good, 2.6, really strong risk reward. There's been a few big winners, but what that basically means, if I risk losing 100 quid when I'm wrong, if I'm right, I'm making 263 quid, which is great, really important number, that risk reward number. These are the trades I've done. How many trades? Number of trades, 15 trades. 9, not including the open trades. So 9 winners, 6 losers. And as usual, I did that video this week on the channel that I don't think anybody actually watched. But the really important thing is to have some big winners in there. You know, that really absolutely makes a difference to your trading. So if the typical risk on this account was a couple of £100 per trade, you know, there's been a NASDAQ trade in there that made £367, so made, you know, 150% of the risk. There's a Tesla trade that made 250. There's natural gas that made a bit. The losers, I think I've been a bit looser with the stops on this account because we placed the trades during the live streams and stuff. But and that's what the P&L looks like. So there's the P&L. So the account opened there when I closed the trade and made £2.41. So the account opened there beginning of April, and this is when I started trading it properly with the YouTube stuff. So it's up at the moment, 50%. The account is up using the techniques I go through on the trading course, obviously. So to find out more about that, go to the website. So that's doing all right. How are these trades doing? How's that dollar index trade doing? Not much at the moment. Slightly against me, $14 against me. So what we'll do now, we'll have a look at the stuff you want looking at. But don't forget, if you want to join that WhatsApp group, go to the website. If you use the code YouTube, you get 20% off month 1, so you can try it and see. I'm not going to ever do it for free because it's work I have to actually do every day, and there are people who pay for it. So I think spending the price of a cup of coffee a day for a month to find out if it suits your trading is well worth doing. So if you go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk, you can find out more about that, and you can get in touch with me. Any questions, drop me an email. Right, let's take a look at some of the stuff you want looking at. Let's have a quick look on the charts. Oh my gosh, this is a bit of a left field one coming in. The Polish zloty against the Swedish krona. Okay, is it Swedish krona or Swedish krone? See, I always get confused with that one. And because there's a Norwegian one as well. Anyway, whatever. Oh, wow, that's a good one, isn't it? I would be a buyer. I mean, the trend is up, isn't it? So what we're seeing here is zloty strength and Swedish weakness. So let's go. So if you do that, I would absolutely be a buyer of the dips. So how much has that moved this year? So it's gone from, where was it? Beginning of the year, it was about 238, and now we're 266. So what's that? 28. So it's moved 12, 13% this year. But yeah, I'll be a buy the dip on that one. Big breakout here, broken out through those levels as well. So so yeah, buy the dip. If I was a buyer now, you know, the closest I would put my stop, I would, as usual, want to give it a bit of wiggle room. So I'd put my stop the other side of 255 if I was a buyer now. But that's a really interesting chart, that. Never looked at that before. Lovely, lovely trend. Nice spot. XLI is some ETF, isn't it? Industrial sector ETF. Let's have a look at that. Is it the right one? Yeah, that is the right one, isn't it? Don't know. What do you think? I mean, there's an argument for going short because it's bumping around near the highs. From that's the all-time high, isn't it? Yeah, bumping around near the highs. So for me, it's probably a wait and see trade, because I would argue, you could argue, absolutely argue. Of course, the trend is up since June, only since June, on the dailies. So you know, the trend is up. If it breaks out through, let's call it 110, I think it looks interesting, that one. So at the moment, it's a bit of a wait and see for me, because we are bumping up back near these old highs. But let's see what happens. Let's come back to it in a couple of weeks and see what it looks like. Coffee. We did gold, didn't we? We did quite a bit on gold. So we've done that. Coffee, Robusta. Robusta coffee. Here we go. I will buy the dip on that one. It's interesting, that, isn't it? Let's have a look. I mean, let's take this through sort of step by step. So we had the old highs from January 22. So those were last year's highs in coffee Robusta. It's broken out, bang, 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 nice breakout. Had a bit of a sell-off since the middle of June. So I would buy the dip. As usual, the only question is, where is my stop going to go? I would have it probably at 2,400. So I would be a buyer. Let's see if it. It's had a big move today, so you might want to wait till Monday because it's had a bit of a big old move today. I've just seen silver's at $23. Anyway, so maybe wait till Monday. But I would be a buyer with a stop at 24. So yeah, that's it. Nice one. Nice trend though. Again, you know, the importance of trading with the trend, which most people don't and most people lose. So there we go. Nice chart. Let me add that in because I always have the other coffee in. Oh no, which coffee do I have? Oh yeah, I do have that coffee. I've got that coffee. And the other coffee, I can't forget what it's, I keep forgetting what the other coffee's called. That's doing the other thing. Why did you choose a stop loss of £200 on your £4,000 trading account? Did you choose it as a percentage or as a fixed amount per risk? On the £4,000 trading account, the stop loss was £100 a trade. So on that account that made however much it made, £2,000, I'll show you actually, you'll be able to see. So on that account, you can see more on the website. I don't know how clear this is going to be, but if you look in there, this column here is risk, and those are all £100 risk, all those trades in November, December, January. So so £100 was 2.5% of £4,000. So for me, I chose £4,000 because I thought it's an amount that most people can relate to. They might not have £4,000, they might have more than £4,000, but I thought £4,000 is a sensible amount. So for me, I've got if you've done the course, you know I've got very strict risk parameters. So risking 2.5% of £4,000 was the risk. So there was £100 risk per trade. So that's it. I am very, risk management, so important. Most people ignore it. Most people lose. Right. Orange juice. Look at orange juice. OJ. That has been moving around a bit, hasn't it? I've not looked at that. You'd say it's by the dip, isn't it? But I would. It's been a bit because it had this crazy moves back here, didn't it? Whenever that was. Oh, it was as long ago as Feb. Time flies. These massive moves here. I still, but absolute great trend in the old OJ. So what would you do? Where would you put your stop? Well, I think mine would go below 230-ish. That's where my stop would go on orange juice. And obviously looking for a run 300 initially and then wherever next after that. I don't know. But that's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah, but I should have bought the dips really, but I haven't been paying attention to that one. But another interesting one for next week. The old orange juice. Dollar yen looks good to sell. I think it depends, it depends. I mean, if you look on the daily chart, I'm long dollar yen on a medium term trade because the trend is up, yeah? But absolutely, it has been hit the last few days. If you're a seller now, where's your stop loss go? So you're going to go with the momentum. Where's your stop going to go? If I was trading that, the closest I would have my stop is 144.80. So about 250 points away. If I was going to put a trade on dollar yen myself now, let's see what happens. I mean, for me, the big trend is up. So the sell-off, for my style of trading, is an opportunity to buy. Other people might see it as a short, but for me, I'd rather go with the big trend. Let's see what happens next week. But yeah, definitely some big moves over the last couple of days in dollar yen. Cocoa, nice trend. Yes. I put that in the WhatsApp group this week, I think, because I keep missing it. I've missed it for years now. I did trade it. I'm sure cocoa and cotton were good markets for me, perhaps in here. And this trend, I've sat here and watched it and never actually done anything. But I mean, look at that trend in cocoa. Lovely trend. Nice, low maintenance. Put the trade on. Move the stop up every week. It's all free money, isn't it? The only question, again, as usual, is where would your stop go? If you were trading it now, where would your stop go? The closest I would put my stop is probably the other side of these lows at 31.60. That's what I would do on cocoa. I'd wait a bit and see, does it stabilise a bit next week? But absolutely, I would want to be a buyer. I've got really itchy nose, sorry. I'd absolutely want to be a buyer of the dip on cocoa. So one for me to remember to try and watch next week and not miss the next big swing again. Nifty 50. Nifty 50. We looked at this the other week, didn't we? That's a breakout. I remember we looked at this and it was bubbling around. I'd be a buyer. That's a big move, isn't it? In the Indian, is it the Indian 50, isn't it? Interesting move. So I would be a buyer of the Nifty 50. That's another interesting one for next week, I think. So for me, we've come up to these old highs, and this was quite the barrier. Maybe it's a bit premature to say that it's definitely broken the barrier, but that's what I would go with at the moment. We had the highs in October around 18,600. The highs in whenever it was, December last year at 18.8. Came back up to it, had a little wobble around middle of June, and bang, we're through. That's another interesting one to watch for next week. So for me, the perfect setup for me here, if it happened, has a little bit of a wiggle down and then a bounce. And I would buy the bounce if that happens next week. But that's that's quite the big break of those levels on the old Nifty. Let me add that in to my list of markets to keep an eye on next week and see if there's a trade in there somewhere next week. There we go. Let's put that in. And that's it. If there are no more questions, I think we're done, really. So we only did that one trade today, didn't we? We did the dollar index trade. Slightly underwater on that at the moment, but let's see. I think it's an interesting afternoon. So in the short term, markets to watch. NASDAQ for me, could be interesting. See if that gets knocked back to yesterday's low. Does yesterday's low hold? Silver, I wanted to do it to break my silver voodoo. I'm not going to chase it though. If it gets knocked back a bit later on, it's perhaps an interesting market. And then going into next week, and there's a lot to watch. I think next week, there's the whole stock market stuff. Are we going to see the bounce, the likes of the DAX, the FTSE, and the Nikkei going into next week? Pound against dollar, that wasn't that interesting, was it? Gold, are we going to see it hold above these old lows going into next week? So yeah, quite a bit to watch, I think, for now. What's that dollar index chart look like on the hourlies? That's still weak. I wouldn't buy that now, really. I'll still be waiting for it to base. Let's see what happens this afternoon. And let's see what happens in particular with these US stock markets this afternoon. So, yeah, a load to watch. Don't forget, sign up for the WhatsApp group. Get this incredible market insight every day. Go to the website to find out more about the courses I run and the newsletter, which is free, which I will send out this weekend. Website is davidjonestrading.co.uk. So go there, you can sign up for that. So yeah, it's been a scrappy week this week, but already just looking at some of these markets at the end of this week, I think next week is going to be a lot more interesting, and the potential for, it looks like quite a few trades in quite a wide cross section of markets. We'll see. We'll see where it brings. Obviously, I'll do it all in the WhatsApp group on Monday morning. If I'm around next Friday, we'll do the live stream again next Friday. But I might not be here next Friday. But if I'm not here, I'll be here the Friday after. But until then, thanks for coming along. Good luck with your trading, and see you next time.